Vince always thought, to his credit, he wanted to make another star. He didn't want to replace the top guys he had. He wanted to make another one. So it wasn't that anybody thought that Austin was going to get over that. I mean, we knew he was going to get over strong when we saw the Austin 316 signs. And then the push was started, and et cetera, and we knew he could work, we knew he could talk. And of course, you know, Russo likes to say he created The Rock or he created Steve Austin. Let me just get this out of the way now. Sitting with Russo in the room, no, seriously, just so we understand it, it was like watching an idiot savant just rattle off shit. He would come up with ideas, and Vince McMahon, to his credit, had the ability to suffer through this and take the 2 out of 100 that he saw in some way as being able to revolutionize the business and just not hear the other 98. All I could hear, it was like the fucking kid that can read thoughts in the movies, in the science fiction movie, right when they're in the crowded room and I'm hearing all these stupid fucking ideas and I can't filter them. It just made me want to do this. And also, Vince at this point was just starting to see he was almost there. Russo wasn't even around yet. This was January. He was around doing the magazine, but it really, when the Raw stunk in March or April, I'm sure we'll get to it. That's when Russo's influence, and of course we knew it was going to stink anyway, but we'll get to that. But Vince was able also to not worry about exposing the business or making the business look bad. He just wanted to beat the other guys. So he didn't care about doing some of this shit. So just so we get to that now, when you hear these ideas, yes, Vince saw some of them. But at the same time, he let the guys be themselves once they were getting there. So Austin was Austin, Brett was Brett, Michael's got to do... the top guys had more leeway than any company I've ever worked for, as far as what they could do or could not do that creative would come up for them, or come up with for them. But China later on, obviously, the idea at first was just a big bodybuilder girl. It was a monster.
Was she going to stay in a bodyguard capacity because she was doing that?
As I recall, yeah. Then I wish that was been the best place for her. But she, you know, she leapfrogged ahead of herself and got political allies and suddenly became not only was wrestling but was wrestling men and beating men, which that was definitely a Russo. Which I think there's an underlying Freudian. A big, jacked-up woman who beats up on men. I think somehow...
she was always in black leather, too, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was. Actually, I would love to ascribe that fantasy to Russo, but folks, believe me, he ain't smart enough about anything kinky to be able to come up with that one on his own.
How'd the dentist go?
Unless it was in a fucking movie, by the way. You'll find that most of Vince Russo's ideas for wrestling make good movies. Most of the time, before he even has them for wrestling, they've already made good movies. But anyway, the dentist was painful. My suggestion at this point, when I first went there in early 1996, I suggested to Vince that the way to compete with WCW was more reality-based programming. Cops, the one-camera thing, go to a house show and shoot something that occurs that you weren't supposed to see with just one camera. The TV looks too pretty. Let's make it a little bit more real. The same pitch that Vince Russo gives like a year and a half later about let's be real, except by real, he means real fucking stupid soap opera that nobody believes instead of just real wrestling matches and kind of like guys really getting mad at each other.
Is this a Russo trying to look real now thing?
Yeah, because I can't find the exact date, but that horrible Raw international tour, Germany. There we go. So the taped Raw that was taped there probably was maybe March 3rd. Maybe that's why I don't have it, because there is no Raw, because the guys just got back from Germany. The point is, there was a point where somewhere around March, somebody confirm if I'm telling the truth on the date, where they did a taped Raw from Germany. It aired for 2 hours. It was lit horribly. It was a cold overseas tour card with no really even angle matches. It was just a series of matches shot with 1 or 2 cameras, badly lit with no stories, and then we voiced it over after the fact. And It was rotten, and I knew it was going to be rotten when they planned it, but they thought, oh, Raw will come from Germany. That'll be a big deal. No, it wasn't a big deal. It did like the worst rating in the history of fucking ratings. I don't know. And at that point, Vince, we had done the voiceovers live from the studio. That's another thing. We had to be at the studio from 9 to 11 o'clock on that Monday night to do live voiceovers to refer to things that happened in the news that day so people would know that our voices were live when we're obviously seeing tape from fucking Germany that's badly lit and poorly fucking shot. So anyway, nobody watched the thing. It fucking sucked. And the next morning, Vince calls this big emergency, and I left at like 11:30 from the studio. So I sleep late. I'm not going to be at the office till 10 o'clock the next morning because it's fucking midnight before I get home, right? He's already called. Bruce has left a message. Oh, Vince has called a meeting. Well, I come in fucking late, and they look at me like I had the turds hanging in my mouth, and Vince is fucking mad at everybody. He's mad at everybody for showing a fucking show that most people thought was going to suck to begin with if they told the fucking truth about it. And that's when Russo's like, I told you so. And that's what he said. Well, this guy must know what he's talking about because he's the only one that wasn't involved in it. And that's when he started taking Vince Russo's ideas. I swear to God, Russo has even told his story from what I am told. Only he told it a little bit differently. But that's, yeah. So then he starts listening to Knucklehead because Knucklehead's like, oh, well, see all these phony cartoon characters like Honky Tonk Man and all this other shit. Well, that's the goddamn deal that I've been screaming. There's too many phony cartoon characters. So he has real life that goes into his insane bizarro world version of real life. And off we go in a different direction that's equally as maddening.
So you're literally in a meeting with Vince, and everybody's getting their ass chewed out. And kind of like the favorite in class, he says, "See, this is what," and right there, it's,
well, he didn't say C, but basically it's C. Yeah, that's when Russo got influenced because Vince just got mad one day and went off in a 180-degree direction, as he does sometimes. That everybody else was the shits because this one show nobody fucking liked. Wow. Because I didn't fucking like it before it aired. As a matter of fact, that was Germany and Kuwait was right about that time. Bruce had come in and said, "You better get your passport. You're either we're going to do Raw in Germany or Kuwait or both." And I said, let me know if that's a deal breaker because I'm about to renew my fucking lease on this house I'm renting up here. And before I go to goddamn Kuwait and really even Germany, I'll be heading fucking south. And then he came back and says, not a deal breaker. So I didn't go.
How different your life could have been.
I could see going to Kuwait in the 90s. Yeah, noted, wrestling manager among troop of WWE superstars, terrorists kidnapped, throw in a closet and piss on.
Did anyone talk about not showing that because of I know that you started airing those "don't try this at home" things at that time or whatever, and here you're showing a kid backyard wrestling jumping off the top of a house. Well, anyone think that would be a liability? And
actually, and this was the start of Russo's, we're going to make all these guys real people, and all great clusterfucks begin with the seed of a good idea. But we're going to make these guys more real people and etc. And that's when and we'll talk about once we get to about June or July, let's talk about the creative process, that it was becoming between me and Russo in Vince's house. But I mean, when it was contained to that, it was fine. But once again, then there's the Sable situation. Vince Russo was madly fixated on Sable. Vince McMahon thought that Sable was the most gorgeous creature to ever It's not, I never had any words with her as a person, except the concept of Sable galled me. She wasn't a good speaker. She couldn't cut a promo. She wasn't a good dancer. She didn't have any rhythm. She wasn't interested in being in the wrestling business or learning how to wrestle. She was making a lot of fucking money and taking up a fucking spot. But because these two middle-aged men were fixated on how beautiful she was, when half of that was created and arranged by a plastic surgeon, over here, at this point in time, like I said, I was being buttered up, fattened up for the kill. All of a sudden, 2 pay-per-views in a row, I called a couple finishes, got some stipulations in, and a month later, I'm off the fucking, pretty much 6 weeks later, I'm off the fucking creative team. I don't even remember that deal being discussed, but here was the thing. After the stinky show that we talked about in Germany, and well, this Russo, he's, like I said, Vince McMahon saw that this fucking guy had all these ideas, and that 1 or 2 of them out of 100 or whatever may be revolutionary. He was getting his ass kicked. For the first time in his life, Vince didn't like the fucking feeling. He wasn't going to roll over and play dead, and I'll give that credit to him. But he was going to come up with something, and as we've seen, Vince Russo nor Vince McMahon mind exposing the business or making the business look bad. I always said wrestling is about doing bad taste and good taste, but they didn't care about the fucking good taste, bad taste. They just wanted to do something. They wanted some ratings. So all of a sudden, right about this time, and also I'm starting to zone out because this shit with Sean and Brett is now fucking going on. Because now we're starting to book Survivor Series and holy fucking jumping shitballs. Try to talk about the Mideast peace crisis, try to work that fucking finish out. So I'm starting to zone out here on some of this stuff, and at the same time, it's just becoming, I was developing a fucking twitch. 1 month later, I was 280 pounds. When I went home for Thanksgiving 1997, I weighed 280 pounds. And that's when I fucking ran back into Danny Davis, and he told me about his OVW project. And I went and had Thanksgiving dinner at my mom's house. And I got home and I got on the scales. I said, I hate this fucking state. I hate this fucking job. I hate myself because I'm a big fat fuck. And all I do is sit in the house and eat because I'm miserable because every time I leave the house, I want to fucking kill somebody. And a lot of that was due to sitting at least one day a week in Vince's house with him and Vince Russo and having to coexist with Vince Russo at television. Because when it started out, when Russo was the editor of the magazine, and he was friends with Bruce Pritchard, and I would go to Bruce's house to allegedly work, or really play with his dog during the day, but we were at the phone where the office could find us. Russo would come over, and their wives knew each other, and then when Russo got invited to join the creative team, first it was him and Bruce and me a lot of times. Then it was just, and sometimes JR would join, but sometimes it was just me, Vince Russo, and Vince McMahon. I even rode in the car with Vince Russo, some of the TVs and back, would tell him stories. I assumed at first, I really did, we got along, you know, it was good old New York Vinny Roo with the fucking accent, and I was the Southern boy that liked fucking cheeseburgers, and we had our gimmicks, right? And everything was happy. And I said, this guy has a world of passion apparently for the business, and it's just a cultural thing. I mean, he's New York and I'm Southern. But once he learns about the wrestling business, because he's never been involved in it, he actually came back, he was already on the creative team, came back from a TV taping back to the locker room where he had done on cameras because they made him the co-host color guy of WWF New York. They revoiced their own program for WOR Channel 9, right? Just for the New York area. So they put Russo on it. He comes back one time, he said, that was cool. I said, what? I said, doing on cameras? He said, no, being inside the barricade when a match is going on. He's already writing the shit. He's never been in the fucking inside the barricade while a match is going on, and he's writing the fucking show. I'm thinking, when this guy, when he learns something about wrestling, when he understands from the performing and the business side, what you can do and what you can't do and what you should do or shouldn't do and how the people take to the nuances, boy, he's got all these ideas, he'll be great. I didn't realize at the time, which has become apparent in the intervening 15 fucking years, Vince Russo was never a wrestling fan. He always said, I was a wrestling fan, I just didn't like the phony-looking wrestling. The phony-looking wrestling, meaning, I guess, anything besides a bunch of people standing there calling each other their real names and talking about shoot-worked angles. Matches are completely out, because that's phony-looking. Vince was a fan of angles. Vince was a fan of certain personalities. Vince was a fan of highlights. He saw shit that he liked involved in the wrestling presentation, and he retained those. He just had no idea why they were done, how they got there, and how they got out of it, and the fact that usually 6 or 9 months happened in between, right? So it became obvious to me after a while that he didn't want to learn anything. I was trying to teach him about wrestling. He didn't want to learn about wrestling. He wanted to change wrestling to this vision that he had of whatever the fuck it is, where logic has no purpose and nobody knows what the fuck's going on, but it's all a work, except we're really shooting while we're working because really what we do is fake, but then we try to fucking really double cross each other in our fake shit, and that's real, and so keep tuning in because we don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
Easy to follow.
And finally, it became, like I said earlier, by this time in the year, that was my day to go over there and sit in a room with Vince McMahon, the most powerful man in professional wrestling, and listen to this fucking moron who didn't know anything about fucking wrestling rattle off 100 fucking ideas, 2 of which Vince heard some type of genius in and would take them and then give his best announcer in the business and the top 2 stars in the business and his network quality television studio all these instructions based on this fucking moron's ideas. What I was hearing was the other 98 that were making me try to go find a fucking chainsaw and chop this motherfucker's head off because he would have killed the fucking business, which he, since he's left the watchful eye of Vince McMahon, has killed every business he's come in contact with. After fucking Hell in a Cell, Undertaker, fucking tombstone by Kane, Vince McMahon has said, I want that match for WrestleMania next year, which was going to be April, let's just find it. Son of a gun, March 29 in Boston, Massachusetts. So November, December, January, February, we got 5 months. Vince Russo wants the next goddamn week, wants fucking Undertaker or Kane to choke slam Undertaker through the announcer's table. He was big on wrecking the announcer's table. I think he just had it in for announcers. Or maybe even the other way around. The point is, I said, no, Vince, hold on. We just shot a fucking angle. We got 5 months before this match. Right now, Undertaker doesn't want to fight his brother. His brother screwed him one time. So Kane is going to go around and take it out on everybody else and shame the Undertaker into fighting him. But if he just fucking choke slams Undertaker again through a fucking table, or you have Undertaker retaliate, you've blown the story, and then you've shot the angle 5 months for a match. Well, we could just do something else before the match to get... No, you dumb shit. Anyway, so point is, that's where I was at as we're leading into the last bit of the month here. The middle of December, boom. We have we have Springfield, Massachusetts Sunday pay-per-view. We have Monday Portland, Maine Raw. We have Tuesday Durham, New Hampshire Raw. Then a house show in Bangor, Maine. And then that Lowell, Massachusetts became a Raw taping, as I recall, because we were getting ahead of Christmas and there was that time off and etc. So instead of me coming all the way back from Durham, New Hampshire to Stamford to do our Wednesday creative meeting and then go back up to Lowell, I was told that I could just stay up there. Oh, great. I love it. So I didn't make that creative meeting. And then when it was time for the next week's, the day before, Beth Zaza, Vince's secretary, said, well, they don't need you at Vince's on Wednesday. Okay. And that's the way I was officially told I was off the creative team. Because let's face it, folks, and by the way, I was happy when I got the job and I was ecstatic when I lost it. If I had had to sit in the same room with Vince Russo, nothing was getting done. It was hurting business. If Vince was going to go with this fucking guy, which he was going with his concepts and his ideas, and then filtering and monitoring, then it wasn't good for me to be there. And it wasn't good for my fucking arrest record or his fucking health record for us to be in the same room for a while, because it was really getting, I hated the shit. Hated him because now I'd figured out, not only don't he know, but he don't want to learn. This is what he's going to do. He's going to do, if he was unfiltered, he's going to book wrestling exactly like what you have seen from Vince Russo for the past 10 years since WCW closed down. This is what it's going to be. And I possibly would have murdered him before it got that fucking far.
But
so apparently Vince, just to close up, said, okay, no business is getting done and I'm going to go with this fucking guy. So and then I was off, and then I became producer, agent, announcer, international syndication, some fill in on cable, Superstars, me and Jim Ross, dealing with third-party promoters, scouting talent, blah, 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 anything but anything around creative, because I wanted to gouge his eyeballs out. And with Ed Ferrara, who came in to be the paper carrier, because then it was like, okay, here's the formats. Russo's walking around with both of his hands free so he can do the yo bro thing, and there's Ferrara right behind him with the papers like, yes, Mr. Russo, here's your papers, sir. I asked Ferrara one time, I said, this thing with Marlena being knocked off the apron of the ring while she's pregnant in a storyline and having a miscarriage, that really just ate me up, because it didn't sell any tickets. It didn't get any heat on anybody if people believed it or if they didn't believe it. Either way, it was a lose-lose. And I went to Ferrara and I said, why would you do something like that? Nobody thought she was pregnant. Well, but it's in storyline and nobody thinks that Monica is pregnant on Friends. I said, no, it's fucking wrestling, you fucking moron. You don't get it, do you? People don't view professional, now they might, but then they didn't view professional wrestlers as characters on a television program that were portrayed or played by actors. Steve Austin was Steve Austin. Taka Michinoku was Taka Michinoku to the fans. And even if they know that it's manipulated or choreographed, even if they know she's not pregnant, I said, what did this serve? If she ain't pregnant, we just made fun of somebody losing a baby. If she was pregnant, we just allowed somebody to lose a baby because they were knocked off the apron of the fucking ring by some heel fucking wrestler. I said, it doesn't sell one buy rate on a pay-per-view. It doesn't sell one ticket to a house show. It does not entice, oh, let's see what happens. Marlena's pregnant. Let's see what happens this week. Don't worry that Steve Austin's wrestling fucking The Undertaker. We want to find out about Marlena's fake pregnancy. And then it doesn't move any ratings. And if it's happened to somebody in their family, if there's a guy out there, his girlfriend or his wife or his sister or his mother, lost a baby, had a miscarriage, and now you're bringing that up and making fun of it, that is why Ed Ferrara, basically, to me, is a piece of shit. And always has been and always will be. And then he wants to make fun of people's mental, yeah, thanks. Had Jim Russell slap me for that one. Make fun of their physical handicaps or disabilities on national television. Ed Ferrara's a piece of shit. And Ed Ferrara was the guy that was carrying papers around for the other piece of shit that perpetrated the following 18 months of television writing until he fucked Vince and fucking went to WCW. You know how he did that? I told you that story. I didn't tell you that story? You have a look of puzzlement on your face.
I do.
Vince Russo was a goddamn video store owner and a fucking radio show host on Long Island until Vince McMahon gave him the opportunity to be the editor of his magazine. How that happened, he had great ideas for stories because he sat in a fucking failing video store business and watched B movies and had all those plots. You think I'm kidding? That's a sad thing. I ain't kidding. He makes him editor of the magazine. Then he lets him do stuff on the website. Then he brings him in as a member of creative. And after fucking 4 years or whatever, Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara fly down to Atlanta while Vince McMahon's in England and meet with Bischoff and meet with people in Atlanta and basically do the same thing that Bischoff did to get the job in WCW, pad their resume, convince these fucking marks at TBS that didn't know anything about wrestling that they served the second course at the Last Supper and that they were the reason why the WWF had taken over and overtaken them. So they end up getting $1 million a year or whatever the fuck. And so Monday morning, wait a minute, I don't have my 99 book with me, but it was fall of 99, August, September, when Vince McMahon lands after a trip to England back at the Newark airport to go to the Meadowlands for TV that night. He gets a phone call from Vince Russo. We're done. We're going to Atlanta. We're going to work for WCW. Thanks, Vince. On the phone. 30 miles from fucking Vince Russo's house. He can't come down and be a man and walk in the Meadowlands and shake Vince McMahon's hand. And I've said many things about Vince McMahon, but still couldn't shake Vince McMahon's hand and say, thanks for making me, a dumb fuck from Brooklyn who has fucking ruined everything I've touched about the wrestling business, $1 million a year fucking job guy now that I am, thanks to you. So thank you very much. He couldn't do that. He called him on the fucking phone because he's a gutless piece of shit. And Ferrara went with him. And once again, now Vince, he had settled. He had all the talent under contract. He forgot to put the fucking writers under contract. Like he thought, A, who's going to steal writers, and B, you know, these people that have worked for me will probably have a little bit more integrity than that. But never bet on people having integrity, I've found out.
What a tumultuous and important year